Hey guys, I'm Tyler Starley, and I wanted to talk a little bit about viruses today, just because I think it's pretty relatable right now as we're in the middle of this pandemic. And oftentimes we talk about the coronavirus when we don't even realize how viruses work in general. So I wanted to give a brief little overview about this. And to begin this, I want you guys to consider if you were a virus. Okay, what would your sole purpose be? What would success look like on the side of the virus? Well, let's talk a little bit about how a virus works and what it's trying to do in order for us to understand things such as vaccines or the immune system and the way that we combat viruses in general. Okay, so let's first talk about how a virus works. I want to use this little image and hopefully you guys can see it okay. I'll try to hold it up in a way that you can. Looks like right there it should be okay. And I want to go through some of the steps that a virus goes through to be successful in its own eyes. Okay, so this right here is a virus. Now notice within the virus you have this genetic material. In some cases they're DNA viruses, in some cases they're RNA viruses. And in this case right here, and in the case of the coronavirus, it is an RNA virus. Okay, therefore it is a single strand of genetic material. So what's the first step? What is a virus trying to do? Well, it's trying to get into our cells. So what happens is this one single virus is going to enter some type of cell, okay, and certain viruses target different cells, such as respiratory cells, digestive cells, and so on. Okay, so if we kind of picture this as being a respiratory cell, this virus, such as the coronavirus, wants to get inside of this respiratory cell. Now, why does it want to do that? Well, the reason being viruses oftentimes can't replicate on its own. However, our cells have the ability to replicate genetic material. So if the virus can inject itself into our cell and then inject the DNA or the RNA into the nucleus of our own cell, it'll be able to replicate its genetic material. So that's exactly why it injects itself into our cells. Then you can see right here, it's going to start producing or replicating its RNA genetic material in order that it can then produce multiple viruses that then leave the cell, and you can see now here that there's multiple viruses around. Okay, so one virus starts off as one virus, injects itself into our cells so that it can use our machinery to replicate, and then after it's done replicating, after it's used what it wants, it's going to kill the cell, and next thing you know, there are all these viruses that now leave that cell. Now imagine that happening in multiple cells at a time. You can imagine the scale that one virus can all of a sudden replicate into thousands of different particles that are floating around in our body. Okay, that is just kind of a brief overview of how viruses work, but I want you to then go back and think about if you're a virus, what's your role? Well, your role would be to get inside of the cell. Why is that? Why do viruses want to get inside of the cell? So that they can replicate. Why do they want to replicate? Because then they can survive and then they can infect other cells and then replicate more. Okay, and that kind of gives us a better understanding of the functions of our immune system, of how our immune system gets rid of viruses and how they get rid of our own cells that have been infected with those viruses. And I would invite you guys to then continue to study more about the immune system and the different cells and the roles of those cells in our immune system to fight off viruses now that you understand how viruses work. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. And hopefully that helps you better understand the coronavirus and help you be more educated when you talk about it to others.